Welcome again to brandylibrary.tv. This time, jumping to Scotland, and, well, no introduction is needed really, because this is Balvenie. And this very well-groomed man here is Andrew
I don't know
Weir.
about that.
Am I saying it right?
Andrew Weir, absolutely. Or well-groomed, I don't know. Nice to see you.
Nice seeing you, Andrew. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
And for our viewers who drink a lot of it, sip a lot of it, should I say, and love it, but might not know everything about the Balvenie. So, first of all, why is it so popular?
Why is it so popular? It's a great question, Flavian. I mean, we are the fourth biggest selling single malt in the USA. We're top 10 in the world. And I always like to remind people that we didn't get there by sponsoring the Super Bowl or by putting billboards on the freeway. We got there because whiskey lovers told their friends about it. They tasted it. They enjoyed it, particularly Doublewood, our 12-year-old, which for many people was the entryway into Balvenie.
That's a staple.
It absolutely is. And that's, I believe, the real success of Balvenie is that Doublewood appealed to such a broad market of whiskey drinkers and became, as I said, the number 4 selling in the world, in the US, and about top 10 in the world. And it really isn't there because we, sponsored the Super Bowl or put big billboard ads up on the freeway. It got there, I believe, on the strength of the quality of the liquid. And we have great commitment to quality at Balvenie. Our craftsmen have, many of them have more than 50 years service at the distillery in making this particular product.
And we're talking about an old company. I mean, if we go back to history a bit, Balvenie's been there for a while. It
has. We were built in 1892, but the story of Balvenie begins 3 or 4 years before that, or 5 years before that, with a man called William Grant. Who many people will know William Grant's name from every bottle of Glenfiddich, which of course is the world's most awarded single malt and the biggest single malt in the world. William Grant built that distillery with his own hands, 7 sons and a stonemason. And Balvenie was his kind of second business venture. He built this distillery 5 years later, and it's always been the little brother of Glenfiddich, but has the same amount of integrity. It's a family-owned company. There are actually only 5 Scottish family-owned distilleries left in Scotland. And 2 of them, Balvenie and Glenfiddich, are owned by William Grant's descendants.
And quite a successful one.
It absolutely is, and it's wonderful because it allows us to make decisions and do things slightly differently from a lot of companies. We have a commitment to still growing a portion of our own barley. We have our own floor maltings, which is the only one in the Highlands of Scotland. So of all these wonderful distilleries all over the Highlands and Speyside, there's only one active floor maltings, and that's at Balvenie. So you see the beautiful pagoda chimney where malting theoretically takes place. Pretty much every other chimney in Scotland, in Speyside anyway, is ornamental. Ours is active, which is a wonderful thing.
Now, since you mentioned Glenfiddich, and it's good that you did, because our viewers, our customers need to know, how can it be owned by the same company and yet be so different? Is it because the stills are so different? Is it because the mashing process is different? Is it just the maturation that is so different? Just a couple of key info here.
Absolutely. The spirit itself is different for a number of reasons. The distillation, I suppose, is one of the crucial parts of making the spirit different. The size and shape of the stills. Glenfiddich has abnormally small stills. They're still direct fired rather than steam coil. Balvenie has steam hit stills. They have work on what's called the boil ball shape. And if you look at the bottle, the neck of the bottle represents the shape of our still. It's a very kind of, not unique, but it's quite an iconic shape of still in Scotland. And everything from about there upwards represents the shape of our still. So that's the most important thing before we start the maturation process. Maturation, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many people in the industry, is that maturation is responsible for between 60 and 70% of the flavour. So the way that we compose our whiskies once they're matured is also very important. And so there's a slightly different, if you like, recipe of casks that goes into producing each different expression. And so the most distinctive differences between Glenfiddich and Balvenie, I believe, come from the way we use wood.
All right. Now, recently, we've seen many different releases from Balvenie. It's just during those last few years, we've seen some peated cask, Caribbean cask, to name just the latest that we got here in the US. It seems that Balvenie is really on the forefront of innovation when it comes to wood. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Well, I'd say William Grant, on the whole, is on the forefront of innovation. When you're family owned, there's a little bit more freedom to take risks and to pioneer certain ideas. And you have to remember that William Grant and Sons, our company, pioneered the whole single malt category. Until 1963, single malts didn't really exist outside Scotland. And so our company said, you know what, we're going to buck tradition. We're going to say, we don't care what the doubters are saying about it. Our whiskey is good enough to be sold in a bottle all by itself without being blended. And so we're going to sell Glenfiddich, as it was known then as the pure malt or the straight malt. In terms of where we use wood, double wood, which was David Stewart's, it was actually originally called Balvenie Classic. And it came out in the early 1980s. And at that time, it was the first time a whiskey had ever gone from one cask type into another for what we call the finishing process or the re-racking process. But we didn't, as known about our company, we didn't jump about and shout and scream it from the rooftops, because that's the kind of man David is. David Stewart's been doing this job for 49 years. He understands quite a bit about wood and a bit about maturation. And so David said, that's just what I did. I just decided to do it. It gave it an extra dimension of flavour. And Classic, it was an 18-year-old, very popular, but wasn't made in any great quantities. And then in 1993, when what we now know as double wood came out, he decided to use the same concept. So other companies have also kind of followed that path of using wood to add another dimension of flavour. But it really came about with David in 1982, there or thereabouts, with Balvenie Classic. And I have to say to your viewers, if they ever see a bottle of Balvenie Classic, which comes in a kind of cognac teardrop-shaped bottle, highly suggest they pick up a bottle. Not only is it absolutely delicious whiskey, but it's also highly collectible. Right. And I will give you my number and you can call me, because I'll take it off your hands if you don't want it.
Well, now, the double wood there, for example, because it's a classic now, well, it's a staple. So what is it? Mostly ex-bourbon barrels and then sherry. What can we say about it? Is it 10 years, 2 years? Is it just a little finish? It doesn't happen for a while in there.
It doesn't, and David's very clear on this. He doesn't want to overpower the whiskey. He doesn't want to detract from what he considers to be the signature style of Balvenie, which is a slightly floral, nice, sweet, and honeyed whiskey. And by overpowering it with a sherry cask, or overpowering it with a rum cask or a port cask, whatever it is, he believes that detracts from what is a traditional style. Now, I have here a sample, which I drew from the cask recently, of a 12-year-old bourbon, first fill bourbon cask. So some of this whiskey, you can have a smell of it. It really does have, it's got a lot of richness for a bourbon cask, but it still has that lovely vanilla sweetness. So the majority of casks would be probably second fill or third fill bourbon casks. They'd be 12 years in what we call refill. And, you know, some people in the industry say, oh, refill, you know, you should always use first fill. It's absolutely not true. It's like telling a chef what kind of richness of a certain vegetable he should use, or how spicy his spices should be. It's about using different strengths of flavour for certain purposes. We believe that the second fill or the refill bourbon cask adds just the right amount of sweetness and just the right amount of flavour, building, if you like, a kind of a basis, a canvas on which to paint, or a sponge cake on which to lay the icing on top.
Well, I like that.
And then you take the sherry cask, or the butt, as we call it in the end of the sherry butt. You put the whiskey in there for about 9 months. So 12 years in bourbon casks and then 9 months in first fill Oloroso sherry casks.
Okay. Now, what about that ex-bourbon barrel? Do we know where it's coming from? Is there just a bunch of suppliers?
Absolutely. I imagine it's probably changed over the years. I mean, if you ask anyone in the industry, they're typically not looking for what bourbon was in the barrel. They're looking for good quality wood.
For the wood itself.
And we have our own cooperage. So we have guys who can come over to Kentucky and anywhere and look at the cask and say, this was well coopered, it was well charred in the first place, this is the kind of casks we want. Send us 10,000, 20,000. And so we want quality wood. We also want the extraction process. We want the bourbon to have taken that kind of sappiness out of the American oak. So it's all more about what the bourbon takes out of the wood than what it puts back in. So we want it to be soft, gentle, so that when we put our whiskey in it, it doesn't produce a really intense whiskey. It produces a nice, soft, accessible style of whiskey.
Well balanced. Generally speaking, this is what our customers tell us, is that Balvenie is well balanced.
Absolutely.
There's harmony in there. There's no spike in anything aggressive. So now you got everybody excited about the 21-year-old now for a while. That's really a great reference.
Absolutely.
And as I mentioned, we are getting the 14-year-old, that Caribbean cask, that peated cask. What's up next?
We actually have something very exciting coming out this fall, in October of 2011. It's called Ton 1401. Turn 1401 started last year. It was actually a selection of David's favourite casks. He's semi-retired now, but he can't really quite just let go.
So he wants to play now.
He wants to play, and as a whiskey lover, the thought of a man like David Stewart going in the warehouse and playing is, it's quite an exciting prospect. So David last year went into the warehouse and he found warehouses, and he had identified 5 or 6 real quality casks from over the years. Nice agers, whiskey that was aging at just the right rate, nothing too woody, nothing too dry, just the right amount of component parts that he was looking for. He pulled the casks. The oldest was from 1966, the youngest was from 1988. He pulled the casks together, 6 of them, 2 sherry butts and 4 bourbon barrels, and he made a traditional vatting, or a traditional what we call a tun filling. And we use these 2100 litre marrying tuns at the distillery. They're quite unique to William Grant & Sons. And he filled them with an old hand pump. So, like the whiskey, entirely handcrafted, even in the way that we vatted this product. There were only 336 bottles, and it was only available at the distillery. So it was like Balvenie Rose for any Balvenie fans out there that never got their hands on a bottle of Balvenie Rose, the 16-year-old port finish. So I know that it's almost sold out. I think there's 2 or 3 bottles left, but probably not when this video is released. So we have now gone back to David and said, can we create a version of Tun 1401 just for the US? So there'll be over 2,000 bottles of it. It'll be a similar concept. We've picked some overachievers from the warehouse, some exceptional casks of whiskey, predominantly from the 1970s and 1980s, and we're going to vat them together next week, which I'm very excited about.
Any more vintage?
Not for this year. We have just released our 40-year-old, which is another whiskey which mostly from nearly all from the 1970s. Lots of sherry casks. It's just pretty exceptional whiskey. There's only 150 bottles of it in the world.